Hey, and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernoff, and this episode is sponsored by Chernoff Music. I release my recorded work under the Chernoff Music label. It's also the home of my podcast network, including this show, Pacific Sound Radio, Vicarious, Jazz Office Hours. And if you haven't heard any of the 3 albums released on my label yet, go to chernoffmusic.com and check out what's in store for you there. You can buy a CD. That's probably the best way you could show your love for this podcast today. Go to chernoffmusic.com to learn more. Welcome back to the show for 2024. Thank you for listening. I'm very excited for another year of podcasting with you. Even if this is your first episode, I think it'll give you a great idea of what's in store this year. Got a great guest who's played with a lot of the best young musicians in the city. He's a multi-instrumentalist, bringing that conversation to you right up next. And then some announcements about the show that you won't want to miss at the very end. So stay tuned for that. Our guest today is a bassist. He plays upright bass. He plays electric bass. He plays guitar. He plays in his band called Path, which he co-leads with Paco Ha. He's also one of the most active side people who plays with musicians like Gordy Li and many, many more. And the next time he's playing locally is at an event by the Couch Jams Collective on Thursday, February 15th. Tickets for that may or may not be available as of the time I put this up, but I will direct you to those so that you can hear him there. Enjoy that event. Please welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast, Francis Naluz.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's a beautiful sunny day. It's been nice. It's been raining for like more than a week straight.
Yep.
At this point. So not having to deal with that has been quite pleasant.
Yep, I changed jobs coming into this year, and I think the entire time I've been working at my new job, which is about a month now, it's been raining every day except for one, and that was like the day before the snow day. So I feel like I haven't got to enjoy any of it. So I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for everything to turn.
It's coming. I mean, well, it was Groundhog Day recently, and I think some of the groundhogs saw their shadows, but if you don't like what one of them says, I'm sure there's someone out there in the rest of the country. One of the other groundhogs had something you agree with, so you can just, agree with that one and hope for the best.
So we could all find our own like groundhog echo chambers based on whatever we want to listen to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it's for.
I dig it. I'm trying to think of the different times that I've heard you. One of the times that stands out to me, and there's a whole bunch of gigs that I'm aware of that you've done recently, but I saw you in the fall with Path, and you played the early show at Guilt & Co. Now you've played at other places too, and I want to hear about how some of those went. But when I heard you do that early set at Guilt, I think it was in October, you and Paco, you played with Erika Chow on the second saxophone, Suin Park on keys, and Jordy McIntosh on drums. I think Seth Kitamura is the other drummer that you play with regularly in Path. Is that the lineup of your band, Path?
Yes and no. I would say Path is more like at this point we've kind of drafted members. I don't think there's a specific set lineup. I mean, technically Paco and I are the co-leaders, but it really came about as like just this desire to play with our friends. And I like to say that anybody who's been in Path just is in the band at this point.
Yeah.
So, shout out to some of my friends who have been in it. Jordy McIntosh, right? Ben Millman was in for a gig. Tristan Young was in for a gig, and whoever's in the future, whoever decides to sit in with us or we call, we like to do different things. One of the nights you saw us, I think, was we were just playing a bunch of like R&B and soul tunes. Yeah, at Guilt & Co., which is not what Path did first, but we kind of just do stuff. We're considering exploring a new theme that I will not yet spoil.
Mm-hmm.
But that will be quite fun. So yeah, we like to change it up,
Yeah. When you played at that October show, I remember that you played a tune by Dr. Lonnie Smith. You played a song by the Jackson 5. You played the tune called Red Baron. You played stuff that was like that, stuff that almost falls into the jazz bag, but really was in like that R&B pop covers, of which is great because when you're at Guilt and Co, that's like one of the best things you could do. But then I know that later that month you played at Chill X, and I know that what you played at Chill X, I didn't make it to that one. It wasn't the same as what you did there, right? Then you went and you played your originals.
Yeah. I find that a lot of what I've been doing lately has kind of been with that band in mind as the vessel. Um, I feel like I know my friends well enough. If they're listening to this and they're thinking, no, you don't. Too bad. But I like to think that when I write stuff, I can hear the people that I want playing it, and that changes what I do. So if I'm trying to write a line and I can hear, for example, Paco playing it, I'll change it up a little bit or lead it in a certain way that I think would make sense for the way that my friends know how to do it. Like I wouldn't write a sax line for Paco the same I would write for Gordy or for Erika, for example.
And if you listen to those three play, very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why I also I love the double tenor thing. I love it so much. It was I was almost worried about it at first. It's like for the very first path gig, I was like, "Oh, we have 2 tenor saxophones. Is that gonna be okay?" It was great, and it is again just an identity thing with all the different sax players. They're practically playing different instruments at that point, so it's not really a concern of mine anymore. It's nice. I mean, sometimes if I'm trying to write a 2-part thing, I have to spread it out a little more so it doesn't sound like the same. But everybody's tone is so different anyway. Yeah. It doesn't matter too much.
Yeah. So you mentioned the first Path gig. What was the first Path gig? Because the first one that I'm aware of is just I have the cheat sheet of being able to scroll back through the gig list. And the first time that I caught you down on the list was when you played at Tyrant Studios. It was almost a year and a half ago now. It was in the fall of 2022. Was that the first Path show or was it something else?
That was, yeah, October 2022. That was really great. It's hard to put it into words, but I feel like I've been trying to chase something like that ever since. Not that I've not succeeded, but that seems to be kind of the point I want to reach all the time, which is a fun thing for me because that was one of those no rehearsal gigs because none of us were available, and it was also me not putting the charts out in time. I think like the night before I cut 2 tunes and added 2 tunes, or something like that. I don't know, something messy. So we showed up pretty early, talked through it, played a little bit, and it's funny because I realized afterwards that gig that we played, that was like one of the best ones, one of my favorite gigs that I've played, was the first time that Paco and Erika had met, or was it a couple of the members of the band had met Suin Park.
Oh, okay.
Which is hilarious because of what that gig turned out to be, which was just crazy, like chemistry, making it work, and it was messy in all the best kinds of ways. I love it when things get a little out of hand,
Yeah, and that sounds like it was more on the original side of things than the Guilt & Co. R&B covers side of things in terms of the many faces of the band.
Yeah, that was, I had a couple tunes I wrote for that and a couple that I kind of pulled in that I thought would fit. I think a notable highlight for me is I transcribed a Christian Scott arrangement of a Tom York tune, The Eraser, which I was a really big fan of at the time, and that turned out completely not like the original recording in the best possible way, where like the energy we had was just completely different, which I loved. So that I think was a good highlight for me from that one.
Nice. I want to go a little bit before that too. I want to know how you got there, because that sounds like we're getting towards the actual origin situation of the band. So you ended up at that first gig that was almost a year and a half ago in the fall of 2022. If you think to before that, which could be the summer, or maybe it's like the back in the spring at Cap or something, like what's the actual kind of origin moments of the band, how it ended up being those people, how you finally got to do it and unlock this feeling that you said that it opened up for you.
Um, well, Paco, Erika, and Seth and myself. Well, we went to Cap together, and we all live in Richmond. So naturally, we spent a lot of time carpooling up there. And the band kind of came together as a desire just to play with my friends. I I kind of figured that I kind of noticed that after I graduated, all I really wanted to do was hang out and play music with my friends. And we managed to accomplish that, but we got really close over those nightmarish, very early morning, long commutes to Cap and back. uh, as I'm sure many Cap students have in the past and will continue to do in the future.
I'm doing right now, I'm sure, yeah.
And we jammed together at Cap frequently, but we didn't actually do all that much, like the four of us playing together, anything serious beyond like, sitting in one of the classrooms and playing some tunes together or something like that, just messing around on standards. And it's not that often that I thought of, at the time I didn't even really consider like I'm gonna hire two tenor sax players for this gig. Like Path really came about like I want to play with my close friends, these specific
with those people,
because I like them and I want to play with them. And actually, that first Path show, I actually asked someone else to play before I put that band together, and they said no. So I decided, you know what, I'm not gonna bother with it. I'm just gonna call my friends. I love my friends. We get to play together. And right before that show was Gordy Li and Faven Kadane's Rush Hour.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I met Suin Park.
Okay.
So like, I think like not actually that long before the first Path gig, and I was blown away. So I was like, you need to be in this band. I didn't give her a choice. I just said, you have to, right? But it was the perfect fit.
Wow.
For what we were doing at the time, for what we were doing that night, everything lined up, which was nice.
I was at that Rush Hour show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll talk about Rush Hour later because you ended up sharing a bill. 1 year, if you fast forward a year, you shared a night at Tyrant Studios. I want to hear about that, but we'll get there. I want to stay in this period of time because this is fascinating me right now. Because yeah, I was at that Rush Hour show. I remember that being a big deal. That was also like early days of Rhythm Changes too. I was just trying to meet all these people who like I'd been checked out of this community for so long. I was just coming back and I had so many people that I felt like I could meet. That night I remember was feeling really electric, and it's cool that the momentum kind of led into where you were at. And you mentioned though when you graduated. So does the timing line up there? Did you graduate from Cap in the spring of 2022 or something like that? Had it just happened, or when did that happen?
Yep. Spring 2022.
Yeah.
Which feels like a long time ago now.
It kind of was.
I guess it was.
Yeah.
I don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
That, the passage of time and all that. Days are long and years are short. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever heard you perform, and it was also that summer. It was in the summer of 2022. It was at the Fort Langley Jazz Festival, and you played with Ethan Lawrence.
I did. Yeah.
So that was the first time I ever heard you play anything, period. I think that was the first time I saw you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good gig.
It was a good gig.
That was Carl DeYoung on the kit, and Ethan Lawrence on the trumpet. Tomash Balai.
Yep.
On
Sax.
the saxophone.
And it was a cordless quartet, right? That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. Yeah, we had a rehearsal at Carl's house in Langley. It was quite the journey.
Yeah.
But it was super fun. I remember it being really hot.
Yep.
That's what it was, you know. But it was good.
Yeah, we had just come through our second heat wave, 2021 heat wave, 2022 heat wave, and then we were there in Fort Langley. Yeah, it's good times though.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've heard you. And then at some point between then and your Path debut, there was that Rush Hour gig, and then a couple months later, then you did your first Path show. There was another show that I noted down that you were involved in within this kind of core period of time, this summer after you graduated, and it's with Gordy. It's not the Rush Hour show, but it was Gordy's debut as a band leader. This is shortly after I met him too. This was at the Lido in Tim's first season of Pass the Hat at the Lido, presented by the Infidels. And when I look back on it, I think this is like one of the most stacked lineups of people in their early 20s that I've ever seen. If you look back at what it is now, Gordy's band there was Faven, Noah Franch Nolan, you, and Todd Stewart, which is just an unreal quintet. That's quite the band. And I was there. I remember that one. That was a good time too.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Anytime I get to play with those people is just it's a whole new experience in the best kind of way. Every time, I've been playing a lot with Gordy lately, and also a whole new experience every time. He likes to try new things and encourage us to push stuff around, which as the bass player is not always what you get to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that Lido gig was I think that was my first Infidels gig.
Okay, yeah.
As well. That was also one of the first times I'd taken a fretless bass to a gig. I was very nervous about playing in tune, but it turned out it turned out well.
Yeah.
Was fun to fit both of those things on the stage with 4 other people, as you may know, it is not the largest. It's a great place. But even in the best of times, fitting an upright bass on a stage with a bunch of other musicians is not always the most convenient thing. But it was super fun, and a lot of my friends came to that show. I got to hang out. I can't remember if that was the first time I'd met anybody new, but I'm sure it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we're good friends now.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I'm too old for that series, for that Lido series, but I have played on that stage once. I played one tune at the Lido. It was at this past year's, like a month or two ago now, Infidels jam session. I got up and I played one tune. I didn't even play the first year that happened. So I have played on the Lido stage, but I've been there many, many times, and I dig that series a lot. It's something very particular. It's a great outlet for a lot of you guys, and it's the first time that I've heard a bunch of you as band leaders, and it's a cool place for expressing something that there isn't quite the right place always to express at the other venues,
Yeah. It's good vibes all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you are now the upright bass player in the Gordy Li Smurf Quartet, right?
One of two.
Okay. Is it Raf is the other one?
Piotr Chow.
Oh, Piotr. Okay, yeah.
Is the other one.
Yeah.
Gordy likes to rotate.
Nice.
And it's fun. I love going, and like whenever Piotr's playing instead of me, or whenever it's Seth instead of Julian Ferrer,
Mm-hmm.
or whoever the band is at any given time, even it's still Gordy's Smurf band, and there are the ideas that he's wanting to pursue at the time, and I love to see how it's different, even if the repertoire, like sometimes, rarely, is similar. Seeing these different musicians change the music and make decisions that I wouldn't have thought to do, or maybe even don't make decisions when I would have made one.
Uh-huh.
And I see how that changes the music, and I think, oh, next time I'm going to try doing what Piotr did, or next time I'm going to try doing what whoever did, if it's ever another bass player, just stealing ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I dig that. Yeah, that's right, because the Smurf Quartet gig that you didn't play was at All City Athletics, and Piotr played bass at that one.
And I
Yeah.
was there, and
And
it
you
was
were there.
great. It was
Yeah.
awesome. It was so good.
I'm finally going to repent for missing All City. I've missed all 3 of them so far. I'm going to the one that's in March, but I missed those first 3, and I sent people to 2 of them. I sent Michelle Escudero to that Gordy Li Smurf one, and I sent Chris Fraser to the Kevin Romaine one. But after missing all 3 of the first ones, I finally get to go to that place in March. So I'm excited to see what it's like in person.
It's, yet again, good vibes all the time.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting room for sound, but I think it creates a unique atmosphere for really any kind of music.
Mm-hmm. But the places that you played with Gordy with the Smurf Quartet, one was at Tyrant once again, and Julian Ferrer was on drums, and the other one was Frankie's Late Show. That was just last month, right? It was the return for 2024 of Frankie's After Dark was on January 12th.
Indeed.
Yeah. So that's in your recent memory. How did that go? What can you tell me about that night? Because I wasn't there.
That was also very fun. I mean, I love playing with the Smurf band. That was a night where we were playing music that I felt I could just be completely loose on. It's not like some other times where I felt like I really have to follow this. I have to be, exactly what's necessary for any given moment. I mean, that's kind of what I was approaching anyway, but it was a different kind of serving the song, so to speak. It's like instead of serving it with accuracy, I'm serving it with intention and
that's interesting.
energy, right? Because a lot of that stuff, like we were doing a lot of time no changes, kind of just spacey rubato sections on occasion, or just doing some kind of really frequent repeating pattern, something just stayed happening the whole time. And there were, sometimes there were times where I would just decide I'm not going to play. And that always sounds cool. I've found sometimes I just decide not to play. And I got that idea. Well, Gordy was one of the people I got that idea from, but I also last year I read this really good book. It's Victor Wooten's book, The Music Lesson.
Oh.
If anybody has spoken to me in the past year, I've probably mentioned it to them and gushed about how much I loved it. And just some of the ideas in there are so applicable. Not only in like a playing context, but he talks about it from an educator standpoint. And it's also useful there. And, one of the ideas he talked about was just sometimes you don't need to play, or sometimes the vibes of the song and the atmosphere that the song is created, you don't need to do things all the time, and that's kind of the bass player thing too, right? It's like, I don't need to play crazy fills all the time. I don't need to do my silly runs. I don't need to play chords, all the way up on like the 15th fret and play my major 7 voicings. No, I don't need to do that. I can play. I've learned to get a lot of satisfaction out of I'm going to play whole notes for 3 minutes and not change what I'm doing. And I'm very happy about it.
Yeah. Wow. I read that book probably in like 2009. So I do not remember very much of its contents, but I do remember the impact that it had on me when I was just starting to play. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that it's still a thing that people encounter. And it's definitely an important bass player thing to check out and experience, like the Victor Wooten mindset and some of the themes that he goes back to as being like one of the great electric bass innovators, but also like he has this really strong desire to kind of dig down to some kind of message or some kind of truth that he wants to share,
Shout out to Parker Woods, by the way, for lending me his copy of the book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great. And I was going through the UBC education program at the time, so that was a nice break from doing my class readings and from the general kind of stress of the program at the time. So
hmm If I'm not mistaken, I mean, you are active as a teacher now. We're here to definitely talk about your artist side as opposed to like your day gig teaching business. But like, you did the UBC program. You would have started doing it like right around the time that you started Path, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I started in September 22, and we did Path in October 22.
Wow. What a period of time for you, like the summer and the fall of 2022. What an active time where like all these things happened and all these connections kind of got turned into things and made their way out into the world.
Yeah, it's a crazy set of coincidences.
Huh. Graduating from Cap too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a busy time.
Yeah. Very, very busy time. Does it feel like a less busy time now? Or does it feel very much like that still because you're continuing to do the work and do those things?
I would say I'm generally less busy now.
Or like it feels less stressful maybe than
maybe that's
right
it.
at the beginning. Yeah.
Because like I'm still doing stuff every
Yeah.
day. I'm still playing often enough. Maybe not often enough. I could always play more, but I definitely feel less stressed out now. Now that I'm giving the homework instead of doing it.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I could dig that. I'm just thinking still about that book, the Victor Wooten, the music lesson. The kind of, if you ask me to like say anything that I remembered about the book, I think one of the only things that I remember about like the Victor Wooten thought is the thing where he talks about how no matter what note you're playing, you're never more than like a semitone away from a right note, even if you think you're playing a wrong note. That was a cool idea.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things I got from that was just he had this whole thing about like, don't try hard, try easy, right? Like sometimes you just need to stop thinking so hard, or stop stop worrying so much about every little thing, and sometimes you just need to let the vibes flow, which is good. That's been really useful for me as a player. He talked about kind of sensing the vibe of the room, or if you wanted to change the energy of what you're doing, or grab somebody's attention or something, instead of playing louder, you can play quieter or something, like cool things like that. Or instead of playing a fill here, just don't play, just stop. And then when you come back in, it's like, whoa, something just happened. But sometimes people don't know that, which is it's so cool to me. Like you can do something and it's going to affect people and they might not even know what just happened. I might not even know what just happened, even if I was the one who was doing it, even if I did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Which is fun. I love when I don't know things.
When you just let them wash over you, let them happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like I'm a little too comfortable not knowing things. But that's the kind of vibe that I like to have when I'm playing. It's just, this is what's going on. This is what it feels like. And if you listen hard enough, the song is going to tell you what you need to do.
Or at least it should. And like the other angle of that is like, unfortunately, if you play professional or semi-pro even gigs at any amount of time, you will have gigs that feel sucky or that don't feel as good as the good ones. And then you'll realize that, oh, that feeling that you just described that you want, like that's not happening or that's not possible here. But like you will know that the reason why it's not happening is because of like other factors that are playing into it, like the timing or the scheduling or the people are not gelling, or the environment that you're playing in sucks, or the sound sucks, or the venue booker, or the contact at your corporate thing sucks, or something like that. And like you can untangle the reasons why it feels that way and just kind of get through it, and then like look forward to the other good ones, right?
Yeah. I mean, I like to think there's something to be gained from even the not so nice ones.
Yeah.
So I kind of use those as opportunities to be very, very specific with like my technique or something. It's like, okay, I don't like what I'm doing right now, so I'm going to take this chance to try and make all my quarter notes the perfect length or something. I don't know, some minute thing that I can focus on instead of not feeling good about what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, so that way I can at least feel like I got practice or something out of that, you know.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Was electric bass your first instrument?
It was, yeah. All the way back in elementary school when my teacher handed out pictures of all the different instruments, like just on a big old sheet. And I was like, I want to play the guitar. It was not a guitar.
Yeah.
But I'm very glad that that's what I ended up with. You know, I love playing the bass. I love playing the guitar too. You know, and it all comes in waves. But that was the beginning. I'm trying to think of another word for beginning. The origin. Yes.
Yeah. Somebody who was really important to my origin, who introduced me to everybody my age, some of whom are still my friends and been my friends for 15 years, when I was very shy kid and not very social, but this guy was the most social guy ever, Julian Jaime. He went to Matthew McNair Secondary School. So did you.
So did I.
How was your time in that band program that I got to know a little bit through him?
That was really great. I got to meet so many great people in there. I got to expand my musical horizons. I got to learn instruments. I got conscripted into playing the double bass because I would have done it if my band teacher had asked, but I showed up to grade 9 jazz band and she put it in front of me and said, "You're playing this."
And she's a bass player.
And she is a bass player. That's right. You know, I didn't even know the thing existed until I was like 14, and it was placed in front of me and I was told to play it. And I will forever be grateful for that. You know, and I learned that bass was so hard to play. That bass was really difficult to play. It's still there. I remember there's a big crack that was super, like the neck broke off and it was super glued back into place. And because of that, the action is crazy high, you know? I can't believe I learned on that. I mean, I'm glad I did, but man.
I think pretty much all high school basses are like that.
Yeah, it builds character.
Yeah, it's an important thing. And then the appreciation factor. I mean, I don't really play upright bass anymore. On my upright bass that I don't even own anymore, you know, it wasn't ideal. It was definitely like a student grade instrument. But yeah, if you get to play a good one that's set up to your liking, yeah, it really unlocks. It really you appreciate it by that point when you get it and you're like, oh wow, this is how it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I felt when I got, because for the first few years at Cap, I played a student bass, and it wasn't quite set up the way I had preferred. And then in like third year, this was during COVID, but I managed to snag this really nice like old carved bass. Shout out to Rick Reynolds, who all the bass players know, of course. And I was like, this is it, you know. And I was so happy about that. I still am. I love that bass.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a little mini game here of sorts, I guess. I've got 3 bass players who I want to ask you about, and let me know if you have a memory or anything to relay about like maybe the first time you heard this bass player or like what your influence from this bass player was. And they're like famous bass players, not people we know, but would have 100% confidence. We've already talked about Victor Wooten, that you will have something about all 3 of these bass players. So I will begin with one who you did a tribute gig with. The closest connection actually I have, if I can think of like, oh, I put myself on stage in like a position that resembles what you would have been in, was I did a gig in November with a project of mine that I tried out called Western Red Cedar. And I had Katie Stewart playing fiddle, and we played like a fusion of Celtic music and jazz. But the rest of the band was Erika on tenor sax, Jancis Bautista on keys, and Jameson Coe on drums. And you played with that trio where I was chugging along to Deluge by Wayne Shorter behind Erika with Jancis and Jameson. You played a Scott LaFaro tribute gig with them at Frankie's Late Show. So Scott LaFaro, bass player number one. Remember the first time you heard him? What do you got?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I mean, that was during my Cap days, and I was really into Bill Evans, as you do. And there were a few times where people mentioned like, oh, you should check out Sunday at the Village Vanguard, Scott LaFaro, so great. And I didn't really seriously do that until third or fourth year. And then I started listening and I was like, holy crap, this is the sound.
Mm-hmm.
That was like exactly what I wanted at the time, and getting more freedom to do that kind of thing. Not that I don't love playing quarter notes, of course. This is because there's so much satisfaction in that. But I had never heard somebody play bass like that before, or at the very least, I heard what the modern people I was influenced by, or I was listening to, or even like current day electric bass players. Like I heard where they were coming from when they were doing that. But I like my first exposure to that kind of style was, I think, You Must Believe in Spring, and that was Eddie Gomez on the bass.
Right.
I was like, oh, I really like this. So I was checking out more stuff, and then I heard, Waltz for Debbie, that record, which just like flipped a switch.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically made me who I am. Like the tone, the time, the ideas, the freedom, the chops, I guess. The guy had pretty good chops, right?
Yeah.
All that just completely flipped everything that I wanted to do on its head. I mean, even now, like I would say it's probably affected my electric bass playing at this point. Like I put so much into that. Yeah, Scott LaFaro. I mean, anybody who knew me at the time would have thought that was probably pretty obvious. And I guess anybody who read the title of the show, Scott LaFaro tribute, yeah. But man, that's still the sound that I try to go for. It's like a very, very specific technique that goes with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still one of my favorite things to listen to.
Yeah. I first heard him when I took my private music instruction at Cap in my 1 year at Cap with Andre Lachance, and he put on Autumn Leaves from Portrait and Jazz, and I transcribed Scott LaFaro's solo on that one, and that's when I started digging him for sure, and that was the beginning of my journey into that sound and that energy. Yeah. All right, you ready for number 2 bass player?
I'm always ready.
Joe Dart.
Joe Dart. Yeah. I remember, I don't even remember when I got into Wolfpack. It was probably high school.
Yeah, because I'm curious when you're a good 5-ish years younger than me. I'm curious when somebody like you would get into Wolfpack, because for us, we got into them at the beginning, right? So like, was it, you would have been quite young if that was you too, but I'm curious, what your reference point would be.
Probably like middle of high school, like maybe like 2016.
Yeah.
I was like starting to get a little more serious about bass playing, really genuinely considering going to music school, and just wanting to get really good because I really liked playing the bass. And that music was really accessible to me as something that it was just really nice to listen to, and it was super cool to see a really cool bass player like that. I have to be careful to preserve my neck muscles if I try to play like that too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I like to that was an important early influence, as was Flea, which is pretty common for bass players, I think.
Nice. I didn't have him as my number third one, but that's cool too. That totally makes sense. Very big deal you have to reckon with as a bass player. Yeah, that body of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious too if seeing Wolfpack already be successful at that point and be like a marker for music students and people who wanted to be music students? Like, did it also motivate you to learn about self-production and home recording and stuff too? Because, you know, you look at them and that's how they did everything, and they have that kind of DIY energy. Does like being a fan of that band or anybody who like makes that kind of nerdy DIY music school student very appealing music, does it like give you the thought that you can go and learn how to make beats and do that kind of stuff? Does it motivate you to do that?
It does now. At the time, I knew so little about making music that didn't even cross my mind. I was just like, oh, this funny looking man plays the bass and
Yeah.
he moves his head a lot. And you know, and it's just a bunch of geeks playing music that sounds really good and they're having fun doing it, you know. That's what I want to do, you know.
Mhm.
I just like to be a turbo nerd about stuff. And that those guys kind of encapsulate that kind of vibe.
Definitely. Yeah, that is the same as I think what it felt like for us too, is because we started digging it because they were like that, and we thought, oh, these guys are like us, kind of thing, and we could, but we didn't get it in terms of like, oh, we could go and record ourselves and learn to do that too. We didn't make that connection. We didn't feel like it was so possible. Nowadays, I think people who are like in high school now or starting Cap now, I think like recording yourself and self-producing is like so common, and you can learn so much about it that it's like it's part of the learning from the jump. But what you're describing is very much how we felt. I think is like we didn't get it until like after we were deep into the journey of learning to be instrumentalists, that we could then go on and do stuff like that ourselves. I don't think we had it integrated like from the very beginning, you know.
Yeah. It was, I still go back and listen
Yeah.
to their stuff, of course, and like I love their new releases. And just kind of the general vibe they cultivate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the other big thing for us was like the beginnings of Snarky Puppy and like those kind of high quality recording session live videos with all their people, and like obviously we didn't think we could do that. Like that was a higher level of doing it, but that similar to how you could look at Wolfpack and be like, hey, this is like us, you know. We kind of looked at Snarky Puppy that way too, but in like an aspirational way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, third one. What do you remember about the first time you heard Jaco Pastorius?
Ooh, that was, I know I heard him in high school, but I don't think I really dug in until college, you know, when probably a lot of people dug into Jaco.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember being kind of blown away by all the stuff you could do physically on the electric bass, because I'd messed around with harmonics before. I was like, oh, it's fun if I don't play the fret, then this like dinging sound comes out neat. And I never really thought to use that musically. I'd made the connection, right? Like, oh, the fourth fret is the same note but higher and a little bit out of tune. The fifth fret is higher, is the string that it is, but I think 2 octaves higher, right? And then the 12th fret is the string that it is, of course. I'd made that connection, but I never, tried to incorporate it too much into my playing. Then I listened to something like Portrait of Tracy, which does the whole bag of tricks, basically. Really hard to beat, and it's he doesn't even have to do something that's exceptionally crazy complex, crazy difficult. It's just something that I hadn't heard before. And then of course hearing Jaco like rip all kinds of different lines on the fretless bass of all things, right? The famously kind of difficult to play thing.
Yeah. Had you already tried to play fretless before you dug him?
I think when I was 15, I ripped all the frets out of my Squier P bass.
Oh, what?
And like sanded and epoxied the board. That was before I knew anything about working on instruments. So like the action was way too high because I didn't file the nut and I didn't know how to adjust the saddles and the electronics didn't work for whatever reason. I think I just hadn't used that bass in a long time. I still have that neck. I should try again now that I know a little bit more. But that was like, I think that was in response to hearing him for the first time and then checking out like lots of videos of people playing fretless bass on YouTube. And, I was like 15. I was going to go buy a fretless bass. I really wanted a Warwick at the time.
Because that's Victor Wooten's bass, right?
I honestly, I just went on YouTube and searched fretless bass. And one of the first things I saw was somebody playing like a semi-hollow Warwick Star bass. And I watched that demo a million times. Like the first 90 seconds of it was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Now I kind of really want a fretless Stingray, but because I've been digging Pino Palladino lately, and like cheesy 80s pop tunes, which is great. I love that stuff. And then I'm just like listening, I'm like, wow, Pino, you got away with that. He really did, and it sounds so good,
Yeah,
but. I tried. I think I tried to use that bass a few times, but the electronics didn't work, so I just kind of played with it unplugged. And it really, really hurt because it was way too high. But yeah, Jocko. I mean, almost all bass players have had some kind of a Jocko thing. I think, forgive me for being presumptuous, but I would say it's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah. I had mine for sure with Donald Lee. Yeah, where I was encouraged to, again, like play that, like the recording where he plays it in 2 keys. And that was when I got a taste of that. I even had access to a fretless bass at New Westminster Secondary School at the time, so I got to try and play that on the fretless. I never owned one or played it beyond there, but I got to check that out at that point, and that was a lot of fun to discover the possibilities of that for sure.
What a fun instrument.
Yeah.
I've been trying to play more lately.
Yeah. We talked about upright bass. We talked about bass guitar, kind of big influences here. What about guitar playing for you? Like, where does guitar come into the picture? What do you do on guitar these days? What's your guitarist story?
Well, I started like most guitar players do, playing campfire chords on the acoustic guitar. Learning whatever was popular at the time, or easy enough songs, playing some Coldplay, playing some John Mayer stuff. Well, that actually came right after. I got my first electric guitar and I was like, I'm gonna play everything that John Mayer did. That was really formative for me, and still is quite is prevalent in when I play. Getting to college was when I was like, okay, I'm seriously going to play like this style of music now. So I'm going to explore jazz guitarists, right? And taking lessons with Andre Lachance, and then taking lessons with Bill Kuhn afterwards.
Okay, nice.
It was just, I was introduced to Ed Bickert, and the rest is history, basically. So like Ed Bickert was just the number one for the first few years of my real jazz guitar playing, which was really, 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 really useful, and is still just a sound that I adore. And honestly, people who have had a big influence on my playing, shout out to Alvin Brendan. I hung out with him a lot when we were at Cap together, and I just stole a bunch of his ideas. So I'm not, I would say sorry, but I'm not. So he showed me a whole bunch of cool things. Sometimes he would pull me aside and be like, hey, check out this cool Ed Bickert thing I just learned.
Oh, he was like, deeply influenced by Ed Bickert when he was a Cap student. Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on, it just came to be, I got really into Ted Green. So like the solo Telecaster jazz guitar kind of vibe, and that really forced me to be honest with myself about my ability to play a bunch of different chords and chord voicings and inversions and things like that. So that was a challenge, but well worth it. I got into that from just videos on YouTube of Tim Lurch, who was like, my teacher Ted Green did it like this, and I was like, who's Ted Green? And then I just went down the rabbit hole, and that was like all I listened to for many months, uh, and it was great. And that's still, I love to attempt to play that way. And then after that it was Kurt Rosenwinkel or Wes Montgomery, or I really enjoy like modern guitar players now, like Gilad Hexelman, Lage Lund. Recently, maybe not that recently now, but Greg Howe or Alan Holdsworth, or very recently Hiram Bullock. So now I'm kind of getting into at the time I was kind of getting into the fusion-ish territory. Not that I really ever had the chops to play like that. I just really enjoyed it that much. But right now I'm super just digging into soul and R&B guitar, specifically like rhythm guitar. And what sparked it was just like scrolling on Instagram and seeing a video by Ella Feingold, who is the guitar player, was one of the guitar players, I think, on like the Silk Sonic record. And then a whole bunch of other stuff. Like her discography just goes way back. And I just saw that and I was like, this is the coolest thing that I've ever seen. This is so clean and it serves the music so well. And it's so subtle, but if this wasn't there, the song wouldn't be as good.
Yeah.
I'm just hardcore digging into like rhythm guitar, and I'm loving it. R&B, and it comes from the traditions that I'm already pretty familiar with, right? Like, that kind of tradition comes from Spanky Alford, which is, he played jazz, but he also, revolutionized playing that kind of rhythm guitar style of playing.
Speaking of playing both jazz and R&B, I've named a bunch of jazz gigs that you've played, mostly like your Path gigs. But I also know that you play with R&B artists. I'm pretty sure you play bass most of the time you play with these people. But like I know you've played with Asaya, who plays at Guilt and Co. and has played at, I think probably played at Couch Jams a whole bunch of time. This event that we're plugging that you're going to be part of on February 15th that organization puts on. But I think you've played a bunch of gigs with Asaya. You've played with another artist called Frankie. Who are like the non-jazz? Who are the artists from this world that you play with? And what can you share about playing with this other kind of genre situation?
Sure, yeah. I've done a lot of gigs with Asaya. Done some with Frankie, some with Maya Jade, with one with Oliver James, and that kind of scene, it really promotes just getting to know people like that. The Couch Jams sessions, those are basically, those are an open mic, and you sign up and you meet people, and then somebody does something you like on stage, and you're like, hey, I want to work with you, or I want to hear you perform. Where, like, when can I hear that happen? Where can I hear that happen? And that scene really encourages that kind of thing. I really enjoy being a part of that. It helps me explore something that's relatively new to me. Like, I've been playing that for not that long compared to, whenever I started playing jazz music. So it's been a breath of fresh air, but it's also been it's been really cool for me as just digging into the history of it. And it's like, if I go back far enough, the people that I'm listening to now are influenced by certain people who I really like also. And then those people are influenced by the jazz musicians that I already liked. So like the history is there. So what I'm doing isn't really that far removed, and I get to just chill out and play really fun songs and meet really cool people and play at venues that I would never have played a jazz show at, because they don't do jazz shows there. Like, I got to play at Fortune Sound Club with those folks, and we're playing at the Annex Theater in a couple of weeks, and there's just so much. I know they did a couple shows at the Cobalt recently, uh, and Faven was playing bass for that one, and I heard they went really well. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your first in? When did you get to cross over and get your first opportunity that looked like that and took you to that kind of place as opposed to the jazz world? Do you remember like what the first ask or contact or gig was?
Oh
How'd you
yeah.
get into it?
Um, my friend Matt Yang, we went to Cap together, but and he was more aligned with that kind of that kind of scene, that kind of music, and after I graduated, I mean, there were times when he called me beforehand, but then he started calling me for those things, and I said, sure, I'll go, um, because he knew I was a bass player and he needed a bass player, and I had expressed interest in wanting to play that kind of thing before, but going to jazz school, being in that kind of bubble, I didn't get to meet very many people who were doing that kind of thing, you know. But then I'd see people, post on their stories on Instagram, or talk about like, oh yeah, I played this cool R&B gig, or it's like, um, clips from a show with a singer, and everybody's bouncing up and down and having a good time and dancing. Um, and I just got called, and Matt just asked me to do like a couch jams show, one of the first, like, I guess, public ones, or maybe not one of the first, but an early one. I think summer 2021. Um, and that was at Civic Plaza in North Van. And it was kind of the same deal, just a whole bunch of singers, and we learning a bunch of songs. It was hard for me adjusting to that kind of thing because I'm used to like, okay, I'm gonna have my sheet music for the gig. I'm gonna know exactly what to play. Um, and this was like, here are the chords in the verse. Here are the chords in the chorus. Here are the chords in the bridge.
Figure it out.
Figure it out. Or instead of being sent charts for the gig, it was like, here's a Spotify playlist. Learn these.
Yeah.
At the time, that was really scary, and now I really enjoy doing it like that. I feel like I get more out of the songs when I learn it by learning the songs instead of learning the sheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and it's liberating and scary if you come to it from the education that you were having at that time, because it's not it's not the way that you're being taught to go about it, but it's something that when you get out there you end up doing it more often that way than this way anyways, right?
Yeah, but it was freeing, And I remember being really scared the first few times where I went up on stage, like no music stand, no papers, just the songs that I had learned and the memories in my brain. And I'm not the most memory adept individual at times. So that, before having practiced that a lot, it was quite scary. Now I'm more comfortable. Now it's more of like a fun challenge. Like, oh, now how quickly can I learn this song just for fun, or what can I do here? Like what, oh, it's a synth bass part where they're just playing whole notes the whole time or something. It's like, how can I make this uh a little more engaging if I think that would serve the song better? Or what kind of dance moves can I pull off while I'm playing whole notes to look cooler? That kind of vibe.
Yeah, I'm glad you found that kind of outlet too, because it complements everything else that you're doing, right?
I noticed once I started doing that kind of thing, I really calmed down from trying to play so much, even in the jazz side of things. I was like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do I need to play this many notes? Do I need to play a fill every 4 bars? No. I didn't, and that was people were trying to tell me that when I was really getting into the Scott LaFaro thing, and I didn't listen because I'm stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's a great producer I met, Braden Ragno.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I said his name right.
Yeah.
But he told me the greatest, because I really wanted to get into session work, and I really enjoy doing that kind of thing. Doing way more. I want to do way more session work just because it's fun. And he said, the best R&B players are just jazz players who know when to shut up, or something like that. And it was,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I was thinking, yeah, that totally makes sense, because it's like it's the same traditions or the same history, but you have almost a different role, or at least a more subtle role sometimes in the band. Still very important. And it's so much fun to see like how little can I do that and still like make this make sense, make it sound good, and make the rest of the band sound good. You know, it's kind of it's turned into a game at this point. Literally, how few notes can I play now instead of how many?
Mm-hmm.
You know, can I like what if I just play half notes for a minute? What's gonna happen? What are they gonna do?
Uh-huh.
You know, and it's so much fun. You know, and then as soon as you start to do more, then you're changing the energy of the song again. Or you start to do less and you're changing the energy of the song again. Like you can do so much by doing less, you know, and it gives you so much room to do more. If you're doing so much the whole time, then it just becomes, you know, that becomes the sound of the music. You're just doing so much the whole time.
Yeah, it's a question of dynamic range, right? Because in that sense, it's like you can't actually do more unless you do less some of the time, because you need to open up the space for you to actually do more later, right?
Yeah.
It was introduced to me, and like I end up passing it on when I teach lessons now as like playing the sections. Like, you know, you have an awareness of what the sections of the song are, and you will set yourself somewhere in one section and then take it, switch to somewhere else in another section to like make distinctions between the sections, and then make that move through the song, right? I think that's a very kind of bass player specific way of looking at an arrangement or of looking at a song. Like I imagine you'd think that way from the drums too, but you probably wouldn't intellectualize it as much on the drums because it's just much more obvious when you're playing the sections and playing a dynamic range of a song on the drums. But I think it's a very kind of bassist thing to like think about that a lot and think about what section you're in the song and where you're at and where it's going next, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's quite the mental game. Uh, you know, like maybe what I'm doing is physically or technically not that difficult, and that's fine because that's less work.
Uh-huh.
I don't have to get tired. My hands don't get tired. You know, I'm not heating up my fretboard so much. You know, with all these crazy lines. You know, I had to learn to, maybe not learn to, maybe that's the wrong word. I had to practice appreciating doing less, and I had to practice appreciating what the space I left was doing for everybody else. There's a really obvious time this happened for me. It was at one of Asaya's gigs at Guilt and Co. I remember like I think it was one of the 2 set early shows. And then the first set I was kind of just playing, you know, just overplaying, if I'm being honest, just doing stuff. You know, being kind of irresponsible is the way I like to put it for myself. And then I was just thinking, and because this was kind of, I was in the middle of that Victor Wooten book at the time, or maybe I just finished it. No, I was still in the middle. And the second set, I was just like, well, what if I do all that stuff that he was saying? What if I play what if I do exactly what the song needs and not what I feel like doing as a bass player who can play fills if I want to, or that kind of thing, you know? And then I noticed the audience was actually standing up and dancing and coming to the front. It's like, oh, they weren't doing this in the first set. You know, and maybe it was a crazy coincidence, but it really hammered that home for me. Just why work so hard when that's not what the song needs all the time?
Yeah. Because there's no payoff out there in the real world for exerting yourself technique wise or doing technically fancy things just in and of itself. Like that doesn't actually have any value out there in the real world when you're playing, right?
Yeah.
Nobody else cares.
Yeah. I've kind of been thinking like, you know, there's going to be, I'm the bass player in a pop band, right? In the audience, there's going to be like one person who's looking at me.
Who even knows you exist.
Yeah. Like there are maybe 2 people in the audience who are looking at me, And one of those two people, if they're a bass player, is going to actually pay attention to what I'm doing. And yet, if I screw up, everybody's going to notice.
Yes.
So, it's a thankless job. No, it's fine.
It's very true of drummers too.
Yeah, but it's still it's very self-satisfying feeling that kind of thing.
All right, I got some other people's bands, some other gigs that you've played as a side person that I wanted to rattle off and see if you had any moment from there or anything you wanted to share about how that went. I think these are all ones that I didn't make, so I don't have my own side of it, and I would hear what you would have to say about them. So one of them was at the end of November. I don't know whether you've played with this band multiple times, but I had you on the gig list for this one. Michelle's band, Kaleidoscope. You played at Guilt.
Yeah, that was fun. That was like, that's kind of neat because everybody in that band is either current or past Cap student. So that one is actually like marginally more jazz leaning than the other R&B stuff, but it's still very much an R&B band. I am not the usual bass player for that band. That's Raphael Augustin, but that was a really good time. I got to play music I don't normally play because it's kind of it's a different niche of R&B than the stuff that I usually get to do.
It's like it's triangulated from all the other stuff we're talking about. Like if you put it on a line of the jazz experiences you've had and then the R&B experiences you've had, it's like over here in the middle, but on a different vector. Like, right? It's related, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good time.
Yeah. And it's like her original songs, right? Or was it covers too?
I think it was mostly covers.
Okay, yeah.
There may have been an original two in there.
Okay, I got to hear that group. I haven't.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do.
I'll go with you next time.
Yeah. Also, around that time, Tyrant Studios, you played with Mackenzie Tran.
I did. That was really fun. One of the rare but hopefully increasing instances where I'll get called to play the guitar.
Because Amelia was playing bass, right?
Amelia was playing bass. Actually, there were two sneaky doublers on that gig because Seth Kitamura was on the keys.
Keys, yeah.
And Jordy on the drums, of course. That was a great time. Her thing was music performed and or written by women, which was a really great thing. I don't think I've heard much of that before. And they're like really great tunes, awesome turnout. Got to see so many friends there. Got to see some new friends there. That was nice. Got to practice playing the guitar. It's good. I mean, everything I've done at Tyrant has been fun. I just really like Tyrant. Shout out to Daniel Bjorkson.
Yeah, the previous Rhythm Changes podcast guest before you. Yeah, the adjacent episode. Yeah. Does that venue kind of feel like the home base for you and a lot of your friends and the people you play with the most often?
It's definitely one that we really like going to and that we really like playing at. It's just fun.
There's a lot going on right now. There's so many great venues to check out. For me, it certainly feels like there's a lot more happening right now than 10 years ago when I was kind of around your guys' age or younger, or when I was coming out of Cap. It feels like there's a lot more going on now than there was back then, which is amazing.
I'll have to take your word for it. I didn't know at the time.
I like to say that so that you can take my word for it. Yes. For the people who don't remember a previous era, I like to emphasize that this one is pretty awesome. Yeah. And I don't have much of a view further back from that, but certainly, the only kind of then versus now comparison I have now is doing really, really well. What kinds of like pressures or expectations do you feel like end up getting put on you or put on your collaborators even? But just speaking for yourself, like, do you feel pressure to like post and put a lot of stuff on social media? Do you feel pressure to like play a lot? Do you feel pressure to make an album, which is something like you haven't done yet? Like, these are all different things that my friends and I, or people of different generations, feel like is the thing to do, or like an expectation. If you go to Cap, if you graduate from that program, if you're like going to have the identity of being a musician, there's going to be baggage on there of like things you're expected to do. Do you feel any of that stuff?
For a time, I would say that, yeah, I really felt like, I should be gigging a lot more. I should be trying to sort out some kind of recording situation, I should try to build my social media following. That one actually was never as prominent. But there was a time where I just really was so down on myself for not, you know, playing 2 or 3 gigs every week, even one gig every week. I was just like, oh, I don't have anything lined up for this month. Why? Is it because I'm a bad bass player? Right? That kind of thing, and
Yeah.
it's really easy to get into that mindset. Nowadays, no.
Uh,
I feel really lucky to be able to just take the gigs that I want to take, which is, pretty much all of them that are offered to me, because
yeah.
it's just my friends asking me to play. I say, yeah, I want to play with my friends. I love my friends. And then the social media thing, I don't know. I don't really want to play that game, like, I use it because it's useful and it's how I talk to people. But seeing what people have to do to be like a big musician on social media, or like the way the treatment that people get, I don't know if I want to play that game. Or it's like the short form content thing. I'm a big consumer of short form content, as I think most of us are in the current year. Um, but I don't know if I feel like making that, because if I play a song or something, I want the video to be the whole song, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. The pressure has lessened a lot.
Do you feel like that's uh it would be good if this is the case, I guess. Do you feel like that's a common thing for you and your friends, if to the extent that uh you can kind of get the temperature of that, like that you feel like you can just opt out of any pressure to post or any of that side of thing, and like it's more common for you guys to just not want to play that game because you realize how intense and soul crushing it is if you play it too hard and you're just like, no, we just want to have fun. Is that kind of the general reaction to what you see out there, and you've grown up having to watch this and all that stuff?
I can't actually say that that's a conversation that I've had with
No, it wouldn't have
my
come up
peers,
explicitly. Yeah.
so I can't really speak for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't be a conversation topic that would come up totally. I just feel like it's different now, and that it, I would imagine that it must be healthier now, and it would be easier for you to say, "Oh, I don't want to play that game," than it was for us, because I think for us it felt like social media was the end all be all and it could do no wrong, and like it was something that everybody had to do, and it was just like you owed it to yourself to just be out there and kind of taking the reins of this thing that was like quickly rising and taking over the world. And like this was just happening as we were coming out of high school basically, so like we didn't grow up with it necessarily, but like when we arrived at the point where we were trying to do our own things, it was like this ascendant thing that everybody was getting on, and it would have felt impossible to get off it and say, oh, we can't play this game. So people have reacted to that in different ways. But that side of the story, I bet it's different now. It's different for your cohort, and certainly it's way different for the people who are younger than both of us. Yeah, they would have a whole different experience with it.
Yeah, I I mean, if you're looking to be that, then you don't really have a choice, right? If you're looking to be famous or social media famous or whatever, then you don't you that is pretty much how you approach it now. You can be really well known in one very small circle, and you'd be quote unquote famous, perhaps. But nowadays there's just so much in the way of options for content, I guess, that as an artist, it feels like if I were trying to really do that, I would feel like I'd have to structure my whole process around that very short initial engagement period where you can grab somebody's attention in the first 5 seconds of the song. Otherwise, they're not going to listen to you. And I don't want to. I don't want to do that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 10 years. I mean, I feel like every year of my life so far has been quite a significant change from the last, which I don't mind really. So maybe in 1 year from now, everything that I've just told you, I will disagree with. We'll see.
But that's okay. Whatever happens, happens. But I appreciate that. That seems like a healthy perspective that you got right now. I dig it.
Let's hope it stays healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that we've set that as the floor, now maybe I can ask you this with less implicit baggage, because I wouldn't want to intend any of that. Like, do you want to record Path? Do you want to take them into the studio? Do you want to like document a live gig that you play in the future to like a higher degree? Like what would be some of the coolest things that you could imagine yourself taking that project, or like whatever equivalent project you want to talk about? But I'm picking that one because it seems like kind of your flagship in this community with your friends. That's your project. Where would you dream of taking it, like in the next little while?
I have really seriously wanted to record Path, not out of some desire to like, I have to put out a record, I have to do this, I have to do that. I just want us to have a record. I think it'll be fun, and it'll be cool to document it, because if we record now and then if we record again in a bunch of years, we're going to sound probably at least a little bit different, hopefully. But it's not really out of a desire to go anywhere with that kind of thing, but just kind of as a record keeping thing. I mean, if Path puts out a record and it gets world famous and we go on tour, sure. But that's more of a,
there's a reason why we're laughing.
That's more of a healthy bonus than it is a specific goal.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad that you're there. And that's why I wanted to ask you about what kind of pressures you felt first, is because like otherwise it's just kind of like a boilerplate question and answer exchange that you could have about any project, and it's just be like, oh well, that's just another thing to do. But that, in my opinion, that's totally the reason. That's like why we do it. Like I recorded my first album when I was 21. I was in a separate band away from this community, playing folk rock music when I was 22, 23, 24. We had an album. I recorded my second album when I was 25. I'm like 30 now, so I can't get those times back, but I made the records at that point, and so they exist, and I'll get to carry them with me, right? So that's, to me, that's like the only reason that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it does. It's really cool when you do it.
Yeah, there is a chunk of you in each of those, right? And a little snapshot of who you were at the time, which is something we don't get to see unless we document it somehow.
Yeah, I dig it. I think that's the right kind of motivation. Now, the last thing I want to ask you about is you have a side project. It's called Archibald Caribou. I don't know much about when you started doing it. I've browsed through the SoundCloud. I've listened to some of the things that you've shared from it. What can you share about this project?
It started in, I think, spring break last year, so March 2023. Yes, that was last year.
Yep.
And it really just came from a desire to. It started out like I want to learn how to use a DAW. I want to learn how to record properly. I want to dip my toes in production and mixing, and I'm still very much learning that stuff. But I like to, sometimes I go back and listen to the choices that I made like in the early stuff, and then hear what I would do differently. I mean, like it was also a vessel for me to just practice finishing things. So my whole deal with all that stuff, it's like I'll have an idea, I'll have a few hours free, and I will start and finish the entire process in the span of a few hours. And I don't let myself go back and change stuff. I don't let myself like hover over the mix for a week, and going back to the social media thing, I think like that's a real thing, is that kind of oh, this has to be perfect or I can't put it out. I don't want to subscribe to that for myself. So Caribou is just, I had an idea, I executed what I thought was right at the time. I did the hocus pocus production stuff, the very basics that I know, which is not very much at the current moment, hopefully more soon. And then I just put it somewhere where now I can't, I mean, I can delete it if I want to, obviously, but like I'm committed, people will hear this. This is now on record. It's on the internet. It's there forever. And there's nothing I can do about it. Even if I wanted to go back and change and delete all the files now, it's still there. And it's been nice to be able to make something, not worry about it that much and just let it go, and there's some stuff that I like more than some of my other stuff, that's the nature of being an artist.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. But it's been really nice to just finish things consistently, even if they're not like studio grade mixed, like finished in that sense, but the fleshing out of an idea that has been essentially completed in the idea sense, in the art sense, but not completed in the production sense because I'm still learning how to do that. So it's, they're really all demos, but it's been freeing, and it's not like it's not like it's anonymous. Like everybody knows it's me, for the most part, but it's really just one single degree of separation, from being my actual name that somehow removes all the different kinds of pressures one might feel for, like, oh, I have to play in this genre. I have to play, this instrument. I have to do this a certain way. All these little things that as soon as you put the silly little pseudonym in front of it, now nothing matters. Like nothing that you do actually, maybe not nothing matters, but I think you might get the gist from that. Like it's not, Caribou's identity as an artist doesn't matter to me because there isn't one.
Yeah, because it's another kind of, we were talking about baggage, right? It's like you're always looking for ways to escape the baggage and to just chip away at something, and then you will improve over time, and then you'll be able to do new things that you couldn't do before. You'll have taken yourself on that journey. You'll have transported yourself somewhere else, but you have to set yourself up to do it. It doesn't just happen on its own unless you like carve out space to go on that journey yourself. It's not just going to come to you. Like it's something that you have to do. You have to initiate it, right?
Yeah. And it's a process that allows me to be bad at stuff.
Yes.
Like very early on, like learning how to, arm a track so that when I record, it actually records.
Which hopefully I've done today.
All the way up until, learning how to, I don't know, do whatever. I hesitate to make an actual example at the risk of making a fool of myself. But all these different kinds of things, like, it happens as a musician too. It's like, your room is where you are comfortable not playing well, hopefully, right? Or, but now Caribou has kind of become my digital bedroom in which I can do things that might not turn out well, and I don't care, because if some rando hears it and thinks it sucks, I mean, that doesn't matter to begin with, but also it's not attached to my name. But then it's just somehow that single degree of separation, putting the funny little pseudonym that I got from just making up names to play Pokemon Showdown with my friend Tristan. And like that is the most freeing thing for whatever reason, even though everybody knows it's me. It's not actually anonymous.
Yeah, you're not trying to hide. That's not the reason why you set it up that way. It's this thing of being able to be bad, being able to experiment that you've set it up. Yeah.
Trying to normalize imperfection, because we talked about the social media pressures, right? It's all like, this has to be perfect. This has to be perfectly edited, or my kick drum has to sound this way, or 7 people in the Instagram comments are going to tell me I suck at music, right? Or all these little things like, oh, what, I can hear the mistakes in my tracks, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm not sending it to a record label. I'm not putting it anywhere. I'm not making money off of it. I'm just putting it there because I had an idea and I wanted to do it. And post mistakes. That's it. It's like, what I'm gonna sit in silence and like try to get this riff perfect for 30 takes so I can post it on Instagram and get 10 likes because people think my guitar playing is cool. No, I don't like, what am I going to, that's time I could spend practicing. That's time I could spend having a chicken sandwich, right? I could do anything in that time besides recording the same thing 30 times for social media because it has to be perfect. And in 2 days, it's no longer going to appear on anybody's feed.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I am going to link out to it when I publish this episode so that anybody who hasn't come across it yet and is aware of your playing here locally can check that out too. I had a lot of fun chatting with you today. At the risk of sounding like an old man, I feel like you've got a great head on your shoulders, sir, and that you've got a very healthy attitude about things. I'm inspired by that, and I look forward to the next time that I get to hear you play. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to hearing you play.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Rhythm Changes podcast. Just want to shout out that this podcast, along with all the other shows on the Turn Off Music Network, is mixed by Justin Gordy, editor on our team. We're very grateful to have you here, Justin. You're doing an awesome job. Want to make sure I shout you out here on the first episode of this show that you did. If you haven't signed up for the free weekly email at Rhythm Changes yet, go to rhythmchanges.ca to do that. Rhythm Changes is a Turn Off Music production. Peace.